Bowls, and he's been a great head coach and so on. Does he have enough moving forward? Are there other teams that could use a Tom Coughlin right now in their system?
Absolutely not.
So no team in the NFL is going to give him an opportunity either as a general manager or head coaching position. Not one.
And I'll tell you why. Because those NFL grievances by the PA are very serious allegations, is what they are. You can't go ahead and do stuff like that. Rudy, you're at a time in sports. I'm talking about sports now, Rudy, where coaches and executives are being held to certain standards. And I'll throw a little curveball at you, okay, Rudy? Mike Babcock, who won a Stanley Cup with the Detroit Red Wings, they tried to get him to duplicate things in Toronto. That blew up in the league's face because of his conduct. And there's a lot of other NHL coaches that got let go because of certain professional standards. Everybody knows that Tom Coughlin is a hard-nosed demeanor. Does that work in today's NFL? I don't know. But this is not going to help him one bit. 73 years old. Is he tired? You know, there's a lot of factors that really come into play. And I think that if anybody hires him, I can maybe see it 2 years down the road. But Shad Khan is the most patient individual on the planet. Patient, okay? And if he couldn't work for Shad Khan, then there's a problem, Rudy. There really is. So, you know, I think Tom Coughlin's ways grew in, and the reputation will teams sign with the Jaguars, the free agents and so forth, the way the Jalen Ramsey thing blew up in their face, Dante Fowler, and the list goes on and on. You can't have these things mount up and think that Tom Coughlin's going to get another opportunity anytime soon. The Giants let him go for a reason, right? I mean, I don't know. Is there a team that you think he could latch on to?
I don't really think so. I think that Tom Coughlin is a guy who's spent as much time as he can in the NFL. And to be quite honest with you, his mentality and style of general managing, probably not what the Jaguars need. And I'm going to go on reach, and I'm actually going to follow this logic. I don't think a team, unless they are superiorly desperate, are going to look at Tom Coughlin. I'm not going to say it won't happen, because that would be that would be a fallacy. But I will say that if this team is in need of someone who can come in to reshape things in such a way as maybe a consultant, okay, perhaps. As a general manager, not going to happen. I don't see it. Look, like I said, Tom Coughlin has done his absolute best with what he's had, and for as long as he's been able to do it. But it's time to move on. Other guys knew when it was time to move on. Some people, like the great Mike Shanahan, wasn't given an opportunity. But I guarantee you, guys like Kim has already won a Super Bowl, who's already been there, done that, and not in a general manager capacity. I don't think that Doug Marrone is the guy for the job there in Jacksonville. He's walking on a very thin, fine line right now, to be quite honest with you. And I think that if you get someone in there like maybe a Mike McCarthy, who's been rumored to take over the head coaching position there in Carolina with the Panthers, maybe a guy like him would be very suitable for the Jacksonville Jaguars in that capacity. But I think that if Khan can take over those general manager duties to get this back on track and see where he's at by the end of next year, to know who he would look for and who he would trust to put in that position, is going to go farther for this Jacksonville franchise than I think other people are aware of. So we're gonna stick with that.
Well, all I can tell you is you're right. I agree with you. I don't think that Coughlin sniffs a jam job. Consultant's one thing, okay? It's a low-risk thing. You get another good football mind in the building, no problem. Okay, but there's been some serious damage, Rudy, to his reputation after what happened in Jacksonville. No two ways about it. And you're right. But I still think the Jacksonville job, Rudy, is a good job. I really do. And you have an owner who's patient, that doesn't meddle. I mean, so my question to you is this, okay, Rudy? Do you need a meddling owner or one that's more laid back? What do you think is the right formula for this whole thing when it comes to front office efficiency and continuity in the building? I'm asking you that question.
Well, it's just going to boil down to, are you a player's general manager? Are you going to work carefully with these guys? You're going to get to know who they are? Or are you going to be a laid-back dictator? That's not going to work. That's not going to work. That is not how you become a successful GM in any sports organization, is by sitting back and allowing other people to do the work. You have to be intrinsic, get involved. understand who these guys are. Once you recognize players and you care about them and you show them that you do because of who you are as an individual, that comes along more genuine. They'll be willing to play for who this franchise is based upon their representation and their impression of you. So when you show that, when you exhibit that, when that exuding comes from you, and being able to work together to create a more cohesive unit, which I don't believe Tom Coughlin did. I think it was him barking orders and making sure that Marone did what he had to do because he said so. That's not the way to go about it. So you have to be able to understand what the front office is looking for, understand what Khan is looking for in this instance, of course, specifically, and recognize that you have to, as it's your job, to make sure that everybody's on the same page, doing what they need to do, what is a collective unit, collective wins, collective losses. Of course, nobody wants any of those, but it is what it is. It comes with the territory. How do you know you're going to win unless you lose? And I think that once this organization figures that out, they're going to come back to those heydays of having guys like Jalen Ramsey on the roster. And, of course, they're going to lose a few more before, or at least during the offseason.
Well, Jack Del Rio was a good coach for him. I think should Doug Marone get fired, and he's one of the nicest people I've ever worked with. Players love him. But it's what you've done on the field that makes all the difference. You can't go out there and tell your fan base, I feel like I'll let you. You can't show signs of insecurity in this business. You can't. He won't land another head coaching job after that. So be fortunate to get a coordinator job after his tenure as head coach is over with in Jacksonville. I really believe that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. Does loyalty take precedent over a massive change? Well, we'll know in a matter of days, won't we, Rudy?
Well, we're going to find out exactly what that means, because some players want to get out. I mean, you have the NBA where guys like Karl Anthony Towns wants to find his way out of the Knicks. Again, another uncomfortable situation. Another guy who just wants to find his way out, and if he whines enough, or if he's upset enough, or if he pokes enough at the bear's going to release him and call it a day. I mean, you have players in the NFL that are trying to do the very same thing. Whether or not it becomes a trend in the NFL is another story. But we're certainly going to find out who's going to stay and who's going to go. Speaking of staying, or let's just say another team, maybe he'll stay, maybe he won't. Steelers announced that they have signed former Ohio State quarterback J.T. Barrett to their practice squad. Very interesting signing. This guy was a free agent. He signed with the New Orleans Saints because he went undrafted in 2018. That's a warning sign number one. Waived by the Saints. Warning sign number two. Signed by the Seahawks. Then waived. That's another sign. I mean, how many signs do you need? What do the Steelers see in him? Now, before you answer that, I'm going to state this. He started 44 games in 4 seasons. He had 27 games over his final 2 seasons. He completed almost 65% of his passes, throwing for almost 3,100 yards, 35 touchdowns, and only 9 interceptions. He used his feet to rush for almost 800 yards and 12 touchdowns. What are the Steelers? I mean, what kind of message do you believe they're going to send to the rest of the quarterbacks on that roster, considering Mason Rudolph is out on the IR and Devlin Hodges is struggling under center?
Well, he's a mobile quarterback. He falls in line with what a lot of teams are doing. When you talk about mobile, athletic, we talk about Kyler Murray, right? Okay, with the Cardinals. We talk about RG3 before he got busted up. Lamar Jackson. Anytime you have these guys that are dual threats, you always want to give them an opportunity. And remember, Cordell Stewart made a good living being able to do a lot of things as a mobile quarterback, as an emergency quarterback, things like that. So, I've always said, Rudy, it's about the system. You try to get the best players that you can. You know if they're going to make a difference. And also the kid's hungry to audition to prove to another team that he's worthy of being on a roster. So I think it's nothing but a good move for the Steelers. What do you got to lose? They could be playing into the playoffs. Otherwise, I still think Mike Tomlin should be a strong candidate to get Coach of the Year. But I look at that situation with J.T. Barrett as an everything to gain, nothing to lose. Just like I look at the J.J. Watt situation, like it's not quantity of snaps, it's quality. You're talking about simple logic in both applications.
Well, I don't know, but I know this. You bring J.T. Barrett in there, you're giving more mobility, but you're sending the sign to Devlin Hodges that he needs to straighten up under center or is going to be a quick one and done with his first NFL team. Now, he has enough film. Somebody out there is going to pick him up.
Right.
The question is who? And are they going to recognize that there are things that he needs to work on in order for him to be that guy moving forward? That remains to be seen. I like the signing late season stuff has me kind of worried. 3 other teams he signed that he was weighed by also has me worried. And then you have a safety and Trey Matthews signed to Steelers practice squad as well. Not a fan of Trey Matthews because I don't know a whole lot about him, but I did see J.T. Barrett play at The Ohio State University. And again, being weighed by 3 teams is a red flag to me, but I'm not a GM, and I don't own an NFL team, so we're going to find out exactly what their thought process is in regards to pulling a guy like him in there. A slew of what's going on this weekend. Packers take on the Lions. That's a meaningless game for the Packers. They've already clinched the NFC North, and they won that fair and squarely. Jets take on the Bills. That's an AFC East matchup. Bills have clinched a playoff spot, but they did not win the division. That belongs to the New England Patriots. So Bills take on the Jets. This is a dumpster fire game for the Patriots. They already won the AFC East as they take on the Dolphins. Vikings, who are in the playoffs, playing against the team that have so many question marks between Matt Nagy. It's just, man, I don't even know where to start with this. But the Vikings and the Bears, meaningless game for the Vikings. Chargers and Chiefs. Chargers are trying to be the spoilers. This is the AFC West matchup. This is probably my AFC game of the week outside of the Steelers and Ravens, only because the Steelers have more to lose, obviously, than the Chargers do. The Chiefs definitely have some questions defensively. And also offensively. I take nothing away from Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, but this Charger team's looking at doing an upset, and they can very well do it. Browns and Bengals, this is more of the Browns have to win, but if Andy Dalton wants to keep his job next year, he has to beat the Browns. Dalton has shown a ton of inconsistencies. I've never been a fan of Andy Dalton. He reminds me of Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer reminds me of every other quarterback that's ever been in the Bengals system. Maybe even Collinsworth if you want to go there. Collinsworth had a good run, but not good enough. So Bengals, Browns, and then, of course, switching to the NFC, the Saints against the Panthers. This is a dumpster game because the Saints already clinched, but the Panthers are there to, make their life hard maybe. I don't know. They still need to figure out what they're doing in Carolina, what they're going to do with Will Greer, what they're going to do with Kyle Allen. So many questions. Who's the head coach going to be? I think this is just a way to wrap up the season. They can't spoil anything at this point, but the Saints, I think, will go ahead and win this one. The Falcons-Buccaneers, interesting that the Buccaneers have played so poorly behind Jameis Winston. And I want to talk about this game for a minute because you have a quarterback in Matt Ryan who has shown glimpses, been to Super Bowl, understands what it takes to win. Yet this is not the team that we seen just a couple of years ago. They're a shell of themselves under Dan Quinn. I don't know that Dan Quinn will stay. Of course, Art Blank says completely different, that he's sticking with this guy no matter what. But then the other side of the ball, Bruce Arians brought in to be the quarterback whisperer, as it were, for Jameis Winston. And I don't know if you watched that post-game conference for Jameis Winston, but it just reminded me of a guy that I just knew for some reason did not have it in him to get anything done. And that post-game conference kind of solidified what I already knew. It's like he can't be the guy to get it done. He's not going to be the guy to get it done. He can't throw the ball deep without getting intercepted. And what do the Buccaneers do with Jameis Winston? He doesn't have a huge contract. He's a backup quarterback at best in the NFL. Does he stay in Buckland, or does he find himself somewhere else?
All right. First of all, I want to go back on a couple of points leading to where you're going, okay? Number one, the Packers game is more meaningful than you think because the Packers are trying to get home field advantage in the NFC because if all roads lead to Lambeau, bring out the hand warmers. It gets cold up there, number one. To your point here, Rudy, okay, RG3, we talked about him earlier. This is the best team he's ever been on. So, I'll be curious to see what he has the talent around. Now, to the point you just made, Andy Dalton, to me, if you put him on a good team, and I mean a good team, I think he's a good quarterback, and I still think he has a lot left in him. Jameis Winston is a puzzle. If you're ever watching a Batman and Robin, okay, you'll realize there's a Riddler involved. But I think there's anybody can straighten them out is Bruce Arians and Tom Moore. But again, that's interesting. I hate to use that he's like Brett Favre. He's a gunslinger, that it's feast or famine. because I think the Buccaneers have a lot of good weapons. But I think the linchpin here is really Bruce Arians. Can Bruce Arians handle him another year? And I do think Andy Dalton will land someplace else.